Welcome, I am Darshili. This is my disability research presentation. The date is July 23rd, 2026. This is for the class The Exceptional Learner. This presentation is going to be all about supporting students who are deaf or hard of hearing in inclusive classrooms, presented by yours truly. First of all, what is deafness? It's hearing loss. And hearing loss exists on a spectrum. So, not all students who experience hearing loss are completely deaf. As you can see, we have a spectrum here, and challenges to students' education can be affected within this entire range, and it's primarily from limited access to spoken communication. It is not reduced intelligence by any means. Because it is on a spectrum, every student is going to have a very unique communication need. So it's important that we adjust based on the uniqueness and nuances of each student's needs. Different causes of deafness. The two main, we have congenital, where it is a genetic issue, or acquired. So things like meningitis, ear infections, hearing, head injuries, even loud noise can lead to partial or full deafness, and it's also something that you can be born with through infections or birth complications or just simple genetics. About half of all congenital hearing loss has a genetic cause, while most other cases are from birth complications. Some characteristics of students who experience hearing loss or are deaf. First of all, they have difficulty accessing spoken information. That is going to be the biggest one. They have delayed vocabulary if language access is limited. Possible reading delays. This can happen as well, although most of the time they can read okay. Increased fatigue from extra effort exerted just to understand what's going on. Strong visual learning abilities sometimes, and a wide variation among students. Like we discussed, it is a spectrum, and so stress can vary greatly among all these students. So, communication, it is key. There are a couple different ways that students who experience hearing loss or deaf students can communicate. One of the biggest ones is, of course, American Sign Language. They can also sometimes use spoken English. You can have total communication, which is just a term that refers to using all forms of communication. The sign language mixed with spoken word, mixed with visuals, mixed with everything else that is available for communication. You have simultaneous communication, which is just sign language mixed with spoken word or cued speech. No single communication approach is going to be best for any student, but it's important that we recognize the different ways in which these students might prefer to communicate. Some educational considerations. Having qualified interpreters is, of course, going to be the biggest accommodation for these students. That would be huge. You can also, if you don't have access to interpreters, you can amplify certain presentations. You can create caption videos, of course, visual directions, graphic organizers, pre-teaching vocabulary can be very helpful, and then written instructions as well, of course. This is all having to do with creating the least restrictive environment. So, legal requirements for creating a least restrictive environment is that students should be educated alongside non-disabled peers whenever appropriate. And a least restrictive environment may include things such as general education classroom, right? Like they should have access to a general education classroom if possible, an interpreter, of course, if possible, captioning always, assistive listening devices, and teacher to the deaf consultation. So, as we've talked about, placement should always be individualized. Hearing loss can exist on a spectrum, and each individual student's need is going to vary, and so we have to cater as well as we can to each individual student's preferences and needs. Some inclusive practices when teaching deaf or hard at hearing students. Face students while you're speaking. A lot of them lip read. Don't cover your mouth because, again, a lot of them lip read. Reduce background noise when possible. Provide visual schedules just so that they know what to expect and they can see that in written word. Caption all videos, of course. Use cooperative learning when possible. Provide teacher notes, just additional notes, and check for understanding frequently. In any way that you can, using their preferred communication method, use formative checks to make sure that they are learning what they need to be learning. And if you need to go back and reteach, formative assessment is going to be your most powerful tool there. Like I said, formative assessment, monitoring the progress and having that ongoing assessment is huge. So just keeping an eye on their reading comprehension, their writing, vocabulary. When it comes to mathematics, making sure that they're using the proper language and that they're able to handle things like word problems. And then language, making sure that they are able to express themselves properly. Some different assessment tools. We have curriculum-based measures, work samples, running records. Running records is the biggest thing for me. Observations, of course, is super important. And then IEP progress monitoring, checking in, having those IEP meetings, making sure that they are on track is crucial. So monitoring progress throughout a unit, not just checking for understanding at the end. Some research-based best practices when it comes to having deaf students in the classroom. Using explicit vocabulary instruction, so pre-teaching vocabulary, reteaching vocabulary, and using formative checks to make sure that they are where you need them to be. Using direct teaching, visual supports are huge. Frequent comprehension checks, of course. Collaborative instruction, and so intentional grouping when you're doing group assessments or collaboration in your classroom, involving the family when possible, making sure that you're checking in with the parents and maintaining those high expectations, recognizing that these students should still be meeting the same learning targets as all the other students. We're just providing them extra supports and scaffolding to get there. Transition planning. Students should develop self-advocacy, knowledge of accommodations. They should know what their accommodations are so that they can ensure that they're receiving them. They should have solid technology skills when possible. Technology can help curb some of the learning curves there. Career readiness, making sure that they are receiving all the same expectations as other students and just providing additional supports, as well as independent living skills. And so around 16 is where it is really crucial for deaf or hard of hearing students to start transitioning out of the classroom and into the workforce. It's of paramount importance that we teach them these crucial skills that they can learn in the classroom but will serve them well after they have left the classroom. This is my media clip that I chose. It's about a 7-minute video, and it's all through the lens of deaf children. Oh boy, I should really fix that. Apologies there. I really enjoyed this video simply because there's no dialogue. There is sound, which I guess isn't totally accurate to most of deaf students' experience. However, it is totally from their perspective. So the only thing you get is closed captions to interpret the sign language within it. And it just takes you through a day in the life, essentially, of a deaf child at school. Biggest takeaways here is that deafness does not limit intelligence. Language access determines educational opportunity. And so again, we want to create an equitable classroom in which all students have the same opportunities to succeed. Inclusive practices improve those outcomes that help those students get to where they want to be. Collaboration among educators and families is crucial. Collaboration is always super important. And then maintaining those high expectations while providing additional supports and scaffolding. Here are my references. And thank you so much.